what am I going to do with this? I have to kneel or something.
She never called herself lucky, only a survivor. Natalia Vodianova grew up in a world where hunger was routine and humiliation was constant. Her mother skipped meals so the children could eat. Classmates mocked her for wearing the same clothes week after week. By 15, she was selling fruit on frozen Russian streets, learning that survival wasn't an instinct, it was a discipline. 2 decades later, this same girl would marry into the Nizhny Dynasty, the family behind Louis Vuitton, Dior, and the most powerful luxury empire on earth. But her rise wasn't a fairy tale. It was a calculation, a transformation built not from privilege, but from wounds she refused to let destroy her. This is the untold story of how a girl marked as less than turned her past into power. Natalia Vodianova's childhood was shaped by a Russia collapsing under the weight of its own past. In Nizhny Novgorod, her mother struggled to raise 3 daughters after their father walked out, stretching every ruble at a tiny fruit stall on the street. Poverty didn't just surround the family, it defined them. Natalia later said the deepest wound wasn't hunger, but humiliation. The feeling of being marked as dirty, not just poor, by teachers and classmates who never expected anything from her. Her responsibilities grew long before she understood the word childhood. Natalia cared for her younger sister, who was born with severe disabilities, feeding her, dressing her, and shielding her from the cruel stares of neighbors. By age 10, she was working full days at her mother's produce stand, reading desperation in customers' eyes while hiding her own. The cold wasn't the hardest part, the feeling of being invisible was. In those frozen markets, she learned what she later called an animal sense for danger, a hypervigilance born from scarcity. Every decision meant survival. Every gesture had weight. Beauty, she realized, wasn't vanity. It was the only currency she might ever own. By 15, Natalia understood a truth most adults never grasp. If the world judged surfaces, she would master the surface. So she left the childhood that branded her. She left the shame that shaped her. And she stepped into a future she wasn't yet ready for, but desperately needed. Natalia's escape from her old life didn't begin with luck. It began with a calculated risk. At 17, pushed by a boyfriend who saw potential she couldn't yet recognize, she submitted photos to a London modeling contest. Within weeks, a scout from Models 1 flew to Russia. 2 months later, she sold what little she owned, left school, and boarded a train to Paris with nothing but a chance. For most people, it would have been terrifying. For Natalia, who had already survived worse, it was strategy. Paris in 2000 was unforgiving to a teenage girl who spoke almost no French. But brutal was relative. Viva Models signed her almost immediately. The same ice blue eyes and angular cheekbones that made her an outsider in Nizhny Novgorod made her magnetic in Europe. She quickly learned the unspoken rules of the industry. Reveal nothing, let them project everything, and move as if you belong long before you feel it. Her bookings grew fast. Small shows became major runways. Money trickled in, then flooded in, always sent home to support the mother and sisters she'd left behind. She studied other models the way she once studied customers at the fruit stand, observing posture, alliances, even who they dated. Beauty wasn't enough. She needed positioning. Then came Justin Portman, an English aristocrat drawn to the mysterious Russian newcomer. Their connection wasn't a fairy tale, but an exchange. He offered stability and access. She offered presence, promise, and a face the industry couldn't stop watching. When she became pregnant at 18, it could have ended everything. Instead, their quiet marriage repositioned her overnight. Brands didn't just see a model, they saw an aristocrat's wife selling aspiration. From there, her rise became explosive. She closed the Yves Saint Laurent Couture show, headlined the Gucci Noir campaign, and walked more than 170 runways in the years that followed. By her early 20s, she was earning millions annually, yet her ascent wasn't effortless. Behind each glamorous moment was a girl absorbing pressure until it hardened into control. Natalia wasn't just climbing, she was transforming, using every scar, every lesson, every memory of humiliation as fuel. And the world was finally watching. For the world, Natalia Vodianova was unstoppable. But inside, the cracks were already forming. Her schedule turned into an endless carousel of flights, fittings, and runways. A life built on perfection with no room for exhaustion. She was barely 19 when she returned to modeling weeks after giving birth, hiding tears in backstage bathrooms before stepping into the lights. The industry praised her discipline, but no one saw the cost. Her marriage to Justin Portman, which once felt like a ladder out of obscurity, began to resemble another form of confinement. They came from different worlds, and the distance between them grew quietly. Long absences, misunderstandings, and emotional drift built a private storm that the public never saw. By the mid-2000s, the foundation had already cracked long before the relationship officially ended. But the deepest fracture came from within. Success, the very thing she fought for, felt strangely hollow. The iconic 2004 American Vogue cover should have been a triumph, yet she described feeling disconnected, as if she were performing the role of someone who had made it instead of living it. She had money, fame, influence, and still carried the humiliation of her childhood like a shadow. Then came the Beslan school tragedy in Russia. Images of terrified children, families in chaos, faces that resembled the world she came from, hit her with a force she couldn't ignore. It shattered the fragile separation between her past and present. Suddenly, the girl who had escaped Russia was confronted with the very pain she thought she'd outrun. Natalia's fall wasn't a scandal. It wasn't public. It was an internal collapse, the realization that survival alone was no longer enough, and that everything she had built meant nothing without purpose. This moment would become the turning point of her entire life. The turning point arrived not with applause, but with grief. The Beslan tragedy pushed Natalia to confront the truth she had avoided. Her success meant nothing if it didn't serve the world she came from. And so she did something the fashion industry didn't expect. She returned to Russia, not to reclaim her past, but to rebuild it. In 2004, she co-founded the Naked Heart Foundation, a charity dedicated to creating support for children with disabilities and building safe playgrounds across Russia. Her motivation wasn't abstract philanthropy, it was personal. Her sister's disability had shaped her childhood. The poverty they endured had scarred her. She built playgrounds so children like her sister wouldn't feel like burdens, and children like her younger self wouldn't grow up in humiliation. The symbolism of the first playground was unmistakable. It stood in the exact place where she once sold fruit to survive. For the first time, she wasn't escaping her past, she was transforming it. The foundation grew rapidly, eventually raising tens of millions of euros and constructing over 170 playgrounds across the country. But even as she embraced this mission, Natalia understood the contradictions. Her charitable work was funded by an industry that profited from impossible beauty standards. Her rise had come through a world built on luxury, while she dedicated herself to children who had none. Still, she moved forward with clarity. Every runway became a fundraising opportunity. Every campaign meant another playground. Meaning, even messy meaning, was better than emptiness. In 2011, another shift arrived when she met Antoine Arnault, heir to the LVMH empire. Their relationship grew slowly but steadily, binding her not just to a man, but to one of the most powerful families in global luxury. With the births of Maxim and Roman and a quiet wedding in 2020, Natalia stepped fully into a new world she had once only seen from a distance. Her redemption wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about finally understanding the purpose behind the girl she once was. Today, Natalia Vodianova lives a life that would have been unimaginable to the girl who once froze beside a fruit stall in Nizhny Novgorod. She moves between Paris and London, raises 5 children, and cares for her disabled sister with resources her mother could only dream of. Outsiders see only perfection: the supermodel who married into the Arnold empire, the philanthropist with global influence, the living proof that someone from nowhere can reach everywhere. But beneath the surface lies a more complex truth. Natalia still carries what she calls an animal sense for danger, a reflex forged by scarcity that no amount of wealth can erase. The memory of humiliation lingers, shaping how she navigates power, privilege, and the luxury machine she is now part of. Her life is a tangle of contradictions. She champions children with disabilities while belonging to an industry that often excludes vulnerability. She campaigns for women's dignity, while the empire surrounding her thrives on marketing fantasy. She builds playgrounds for Russian children, while her own attends schools most families could never afford. And yet she continues, aware of these tensions but unwilling to let them stop her. To young models, she is the finished story, the survivor turned supernova, the woman who transformed trauma to influence. But Natalia knows the truth those girls can't yet see. The distance between selling vegetables on the street and walking couture runways is vast and razor thin. One wrong move, one missed chance, and her life could have been entirely different. Her greatest achievement may not be the wealth, the status, or even the empire she married into. It is the erasure of generational hunger, the transformation of humiliation into legacy. Natalia didn't escape her past. She built upon it. She weaponized it. And in doing so, she became the rarest kind of icon, a woman shaped by darkness, but defined by what she created from it.